Some of Donald Trump's closest Republican allies have been denouncing his obvious endorsement of the concept of foreign collusion for his reelection campaign this week. And we've covered that. We've credited that, if you want to call it that. But you need to know, before you get onto your weekend, a glaring exception. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has not condemned these remarks. He went on Fox News to basically offer his support of Trump despite the embrace of collusion.
Do you have a problem with that answer? Because the Democrats seem to be taking that and saying, aha, see, we told you so. Now it's on to impeachment.
They just can't let it go, Laura. You know, I said weeks ago, case closed. We got the Mueller report.
Would you answer that question that way?
Well, he gets picked at every day over every different aspect of it. But the fundamental point is they're trying to keep the 2016 election alive and the investigation alive.
The fundamental point was about the 2020 election, where the president welcomed collusion to the degree that now he's backtracking. Senator McConnell doing a friendly interview there with Fox News, so he wasn't pressed on that. But this is bigger, as we've been emphasizing, than just the public statements, shocking as they may be. McConnell has made legislative actions and decisions that actually leave the United States more vulnerable to exactly the election interference that we know occurred. That's because he has served as this roadblock to, yes, bipartisan legislation to do simple things to try to protect the elections. He told his colleagues there are no plans to consider any bills that would just try to make elections secure. And this is a move in line with his larger self-described proud role as the Senate's legislative Grim Reaper.
Let me tell you this. If I'm still the majority leader of the Senate, think of me as the Grim Reaper. None of that stuff is going to pass. None of it.
And that stuff's not just Democratic. McConnell is blocking bipartisan bills. You're looking at some of the co-sponsors, which include people like Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham. Republican senator recently admitting these bills were not getting votes because of Mitch McConnell.
Are we going to be marking up any of those bills on election security?
It was not a topic of discussion today, but at this point, I don't see any likelihood that those bills would get to the floor if we mark them up.
Why?
Same reason we couldn't get our bill to the floor last year.
Which is?
I think the majority leader just is of the view that this debate reaches no conclusion.
The majority leader, that is important sound that you heard there, Senator Durbin getting the answer. So McConnell's basic resistance to deal with what they're calling election security, as well as counter cyber, has already had a larger impact. We're talking about 2020 and what's going to happen and him being the Grim Reaper. But remember, there was a version of this, and to be fair, it was not as big a deal in the public realm at the time because not everyone knew what was happening. But the intelligence agencies privately had information at the highest levels about the ongoing Russian meddling. And it was Mitch McConnell who pushed back vehemently on their findings in a way that his colleagues said was partisan. And then he also objected to any bipartisan effort to give the public more notice about the Kremlin's role in those ongoing attacks.
Mitch McConnell wanted no part of having a bipartisan commitment that we would say, essentially, Russia's doing this, stop. The die had been cast here. This was all about the political play.
The political play. Now, if you want to be skeptical, you could look at that footage there and say, well, that's Joe Biden. He's a Democrat. He's criticizing Mitch McConnell. But what Joe Biden said and other nonpartisan intelligence experts said is that he was speaking as the vice president, that there was a security level of this, that it was about protecting the elections regardless of what was going to happen. Many people thought at the time Trump was going to lose anyway, and that Mitch McConnell, for his own political reasons, didn't want the election as protected as possible. A chilling thought, and one that we are going to stay on. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.